It's a nitro fuel duel. Side-by-side competition. Nitro funny cars versus top fuel dragsters. Nitro Wars. The first ever Winston Noble Showdown for 200 grand. In the foothills of the Appalachians, a most unusual drag racing event, pitting top fuel dragsters against nitro funny cars in the inaugural Winston Noble Showdown. This is the brand new Bristol Dragway. Hi everybody, I'm Dave McClelland, and of course if you follow drag racing for any years, you know Bristol Dragway's been here for a long time. In fact, NHRA held its Spring Nationals here from 1965 to 1967. But the years began to take its toll, not only on the racing surface, but on the remainder of the facilities as well. A few years ago, Bruton Smith purchased Bristol Motor Speedway, which included the property occupied by Bristol Dragway. He launched a $14 million renovation program that has given us an absolute state-of-the-art drag racing facility for the inaugural Winston Showdown. Some highlights of what's transpired thus far. We'll show them to you in just a moment, but right now let's go to Bill Stevens with how and what this race is all about.
The Winston Noble Showdown will have a 24-car field, 12 top fuel dragsters, and 12 funny cars. And here's how the drivers could have qualified. First, to be a reigning Winston champion. Secondly, to be one of 9 different recent national event winners on the NHRA trail. And third, based on qualifying times, to get one of the 2 open positions in each category. And what does it all mean? Well, by the time this little game of Wango Tango is over, one driver will take home $200,000 in cash.
Let's take a look how they qualified. Here's the list for top fuel, headed by Bob Vandergriff Jr., who on his final qualifying effort ripped off a great 4:55. The number 12 qualifier preceded Kristen Powell. John Force headed the funny car list with a 4:94. That went all the way down to the number 12 qualifier, Al Hoffman, one of the seeded cars. He ran an 8:12. This is a 24-car field. Rather strange if you follow drag racing normally. Number 1 qualifier in top fuel, that's Bob Vandergriff, will race Al Hoffman, the number 12 qualifier, and so on through the list. Throughout qualifying, there was a 0.3 of a second advantage given to funny cars over the dragsters. They ran each other and they tried everything they could think of to throw off the top fuel dragsters. The funny cars who got to leave first got to play a little bit, like John Force. He intentionally red lit to see if he could draw off his competitor. Didn't work. The red light, of course, not counting in qualifying, but it can sure mess up a top fuel driver if he's trying to react to the sound. That's what Al Hoffman did in round number 1 against Bob Vandergriff. The handicap had been moved slightly based upon qualifying times, 37 hundredths of a second advantage going to the funny cars. Listen to what Al Hoffman did in staging. Right there, Hoffman hit the throttle hoping to draw Vandergriff off. Didn't work. Vandergriff blasts out a 461. Hoffman shook the tires and had to shut off. As much a psychological warfare as it is side-by-side racing. Well, not all the top fuel dragsters had the hang of it. Watch what happened to Joe Amato against Chuck Etchells. Amato redlighting by 8 thousandths of a second, handed the round victory to Chuck Etchells. And of course, this is round number 1 racing at the Winston Noble Showdown. The funny cars, some of them had their share of problems as well. Here is Phil Burkhardt up against Corey McLenithan. He shook the tires, literally shook the parachute out. Corey Mack went to the second round with a fine 469. The rains came and the rains went. The rains came back again. And finally, the race was delayed to the next day. First pair we saw, Jim Head against Tim Wilkerson. The racetrack, though, was not the same. Wilkerson into a big wheel stand, hit the wall, bounced off the wall, took him out of competition. And our third member of the broadcast team, Alan Reinhardt, talked to Tim.
I think you're probably mad that you lost the race, huh, Tim? I mean, geez, pedal. We saw the wheel stand. You're okay?
Yeah, I'm all right. Just aggravated with the whole situation today. Too much rain and not enough time to get prepared, and just not happy. Thanks.
A tough break for Tim Wilkerson. When we come back, more from the Winston No Bull Showdown at Bristol Ragway. We're back in the John Force pit area at the all-new Bristol Ragway, and this No Bull Showdown with 200 grand going to the winner. Earlier, Alan asked the obvious question.
Corey, what do you think of this handicap format?
The hardest part for me is when they're out on you, you can't hear your own car, so it kind of distracts you a little bit, but it's still a lot of fun.
I think they could take it away if they'd strap 200 or 300 pounds on them dragsters.
I'll let you know by midnight on Saturday night. We'll go over it then.
It's like John Force. It's way different.
As long as I can't break out, I don't care. I'll just go as fast as I can.
Is this handicap? I just thought I was getting left on like I always am.
I think nobody has an advantage. If you leave on time and do your own deal, race your own race, funny car win or dragster win. I drove them both, don't matter.
I love it. You can't beat it. I wouldn't want to be the dragster guys, I'll put it that way.
Well, we're down to 12 cars now, and of course, 2 of the dragsters went out by red light in round number 1. This is Kenny Bernstein. He's ailing this weekend. His right shoulder is giving him serious trouble, but he is still capable of driving. He is challenging Whit Bazemore at the wheel of the Chuck Etchells Kendall car. Bernstein caught and passed Etchells at about 1,000 foot. Look at the time, 4:57 at 315 miles an hour with a 450 reaction. Allen was there.
You can tell by the way Kenny took his helmet off. That one hurt. Let's see if this makes you feel better. 4:57.
Oh, that's great. Great job by Lee Beard, the Budweiser King team. That was wonderful. Yeah, it zinged me pretty good that time, but that's all right. Hey, it's going to be that way. We just live with it. You guys help me out down here.
If he makes that 200 grand, he'll be high-fiving with that sore arm.
The next pair in round number 2 racing was Chuck Etchells against Doug Coletta. Tom Anderson serving as the crew chief on the all-white car. That is Etchells driving for Jimmy Sickles. Doug Coletta, of course, the nephew of the car owner, Connie Coletta. Made this field by virtue of a win back in 1998. Red light start for Coletta. He could not wait. So for the second round in a row, Chuck Etchells advances via the red light by the Top Fuel dragster. The next pair pitted John Force and his new paint scheme, the Superman car, up against Jim Head. Winner back in 1997. That seeded Jim Head into this very elite 12-car Top Fuel field. John Force staging very precisely, as light as possible. Head went up in smoke, and Force went to the finish line with a 5:01.287. Alan Reinhardt was there to talk to him after the win.
You're still looking like the man of steel. 5:01 out there?
I tried to fly earlier. You saw I couldn't do that. When I was Elvis, I couldn't sing either. But bottom line, you race Head. You know you got to give it what you got. She's still getting loose way down track, but I know a lot of people look at that shallow stage up there, but you're trying to realize that if you got a better ET, you can still come back if you lose. So we tried to play the strategy both ways. Either way, win or lose, maybe we can still come back. So, well, we got away with it. But Casper don't pay us to think. They just pay us to win. But what the hell does that mean?
He said the other night he wins when he's confused.
He ought to win for the rest of his life, would be my interpretation. This is Gary Selsey, made the field by virtue of his Winston Championship. His opponent is Cruz Pedregon at the wheel of his own race car. Cruz had some problems, but Gary Selsey did not. 4.60 at 313 miles an hour.
460. That's pretty strong.
Yeah, it is, but it was doing funny stuff. I was fighting it all the way down there. It was trying to get out of the groove, but Team Winston's going to the third round, and that's good money.
Of course, the $200,000 sitting in everybody's eyes. This is a race between funny cars and top fuel dragsters, but in this second round confrontation, it was two top fuel dragsters. Tony Schumacher, who had defeated Tony Pedregon in the first round, racing Bob Vandergrift, who had defeated Al Hoffman. Something went wrong with Schumacher's car at the starting line. Vandergrift slowing to a 4.70 at only 300. Allen checked in with Tony Schu to find out what happened.
That is the throttle cable on the Exide top fuel car, and Tony Schumacher, that 50-cent part might have cost you 200 grand, because I got to believe you could outrun a 70.
Absolutely. You know, we had this thing set up on a real good run, and we're seeing the cars go right down the left lane. So that's unfortunate, because that's definitely not the most expensive piece of machinery on this thing. But, you know, we're in Exide country. We really wanted to do a good here. Went by first round to take out one of the Force teams, you know, with Tony Pedregon first round. Man, we were really looking for a victory here.
The next pair in round number 2 pitted a pair of teammates, both drivers for Coach Joe Gibbs. Corey McLenithan at the wheel of the top fuel dragster. Tommy Johnson Jr. at the wheel of the Interstate Batteries funny car. A good race. The head start went to Tommy Johnson Jr., but Corey Mack won it by half a car length, 462 to a losing 501. Tommy may have lost this round, but he'll be back again. Bill Stevens has the story.
Well, having a 24-car field in drag racing leads to a little bit of a mathematical speed bump. By the time you get to the semifinals, you've only got 3 cars. The NHRA didn't want anybody getting a buy run with all this money on the line, so they instituted this plan. The low ET loser in funny car and dragster in the second round would come back for round number 3. Tommy Johnson Jr. lost to Corey Mack in a great race, but his 5:01 elapsed time was the low ET for losers for funny cars in round 2. He'll move on. And in dragsters, the 461 that Doug Coletta ran and his loss against Chuck Etchels puts him back in again. Just like in the second round, in the third round, we've only got 1 pair of cars comprised strictly of top fuel dragsters. So far, the funny cars are not going quietly.
4 pairs of cars remain in round number 3 of Nitro Wars. It's the Winston Noble Showdown. Welcome back to Bristol Dragway. This is the NHRA Winston Noble Showdown. Top fuel dragsters against funny cars. There's the best of the bunch of the dragsters. Bob Vandergrift, he's strapping in for round number 3 against Tommy Johnson Jr. Earlier in pre-race ceremonies, there was an emotional moment here at Bristol Dragway. That's Darrell Gwynn riding in the back seat of Roy Hill's 2-seater dragster. Racing fans today know Darrell as the car owner of the Mopar dragster, but he was a great top fuel driver. Had that devastating accident back in 1990 in England that left him paralyzed. This was the first time he had been back in a dragster cockpit since the accident. His dad, Jerry, just as happy and proud as he could be of Darrell Gwynn getting a ride in a dragster one more time. Kicking off round number 3 action between the top fuel dragsters and funny cars, it's Tommy Johnson Jr. He got the break with that 5:01 quick loser time. That put him back in. That's the good news. The bad news is he's got to run the best top fueler there is this weekend, Bob Vandergrift Jr. While he had a fine 4:55 in qualifying, Vandergrift has not come close to matching that in elimination. Again, the handicap head start goes to the funny cars. 37 hundredths of a second. There is no breakout. They drive them as hard as they can to the finish line. Top fuel dragsters against funny cars. Truly, Nitro Wars. Vandergrift pulling ahead with a 4:58. He seems to be back on track with that run at 314 miles an hour. Tommy Johnson Jr. had a great reaction time, but could not run the number. The car skating around like Brian Boitano on asphalt. It cost him too, as Vandergriff squeezed ahead to take the win. Let's go to Allen.
Hey, you got your hot rod back.
Yeah, well, it didn't spin the tires that time. You know, Ray and Johnny got their heads together down there, and Jersey's active where our team made a good run, and that's, like I said, one more round, one more time. Do it 2 more times, we got us the big money.
You had to be thinking that's one of the toughest funny cars in the world.
Oh, you know, that team's a great, you know, that car is bad. I mean, and we knew we had to be on top of our game, and a 70 wasn't going to do it, so we put the tune-up back in it, and luckily it stuck. And you'll need that the rest of the day, or else you'll be going home.
Well, one dragster has now advanced to the semis. What's going to happen next? Here's Superman, the Winston champion. He's the #1 qualifier based on performance here at Bristol. His opponent, another driver that came back in by virtue of the quick loser rule, filling the hole that is automatic in a 24-car field. This is Doug Coletta. There in the background, you see the very patient Ed McCulloch, a many-time national event champion. In fact, won 6 times at Indy alone. He's the head wrench for Coletta and certainly has helped out in Doug's driving. Fourth against Coletta. Austin Coyle directing John right to the spot he wants him. Now they go through the staging procedure. When both lights at the top of the tree are lit, starter Rick Stewart can throw the switch at any time. And a funny car now goes to the semis. John Force wins a 494 at 304. A 5:05 reaction time for John. Doug Coletta trailing with a fine 462 at 310 miles an hour. A pretty run indeed for Force. Remember how Tommy Johnson was skating all over the lane? Not so for Force. Here's Allen.
I'm starting to think you really are Superman.
No, I ain't Superman. I just, we got a good race car. We were there, just there, whatever. I don't know exactly what they run, but Coyle, Bernie Medlin, they've really been working on this racetrack, trying to negotiate. I thought it was going to get loose down there, and the old Mustang just trucked right through there. That's what Castro pays us to do, is win. And I don't know what happened to him, but anytime you race Ed McCulloch and the Coletta kid, you know you got to throw all of you got, and we just, hell, I can't even talk no more. It's just a good old race. I'm glad.
Today, if he wins, Winston's going to pay him $200,000.
We've got more of the top fuel dragsters against the funny cars coming up next. In addition to the 37/100ths of a second head start that the funny cars have over the dragsters, they've got another big advantage. Their headers are pointed right at the dragster driver's face. For Kenny Bernstein, that presented another problem that they had to contend with. Alan Reinhart had a chance to check in and find out what they did to solve it.
When the funny car leaves, it shakes the ground so hard, it vibrates this car, and the windshield vibrates, and I'm looking through the windshield at the Christmas tree, and I can't see the Christmas tree. It's a big blur, and all I'm able to see when the lights come on is one row of yellow lights in a blurry position, so you can't concentrate on that big yellow bulb that we like to concentrate on. So what we're doing, after talking over, and I might say Cheryl, my girlfriend, is the one that figured this out, Lee and I talked and said, let's cut the windshield down so you can look over it, so if it vibrates the windshield and the car, as it will, maybe you can pick up that Christmas tree plainer and you won't be looking through something that's vibrating.
On the starting line, Kenny Bernstein up against Chuck Etchels. It was just a round to go that Bernstein took out Whit Bazemore in the Chuck Etchels-owned funny car. Now Chuck doing the driving for Jim Sickles. He was preceded as a driver into the show, and he's been behind the wheel of the Sickles car a couple of times already this season. Bernstein and his crew chief Lee Beard trying all the tricks they know. Oh, maybe he saw just too much of the tree. A red light for Bernstein, but he drove it through anyway at a 476, 295 miles an hour. And for the third round in a row, Chuck Etchels advances with a red light. Watch and see the head start going to the funny car. Kenny could not wait. He stood on the throttle, dropped a cylinder during the run. He was down on power a little bit, but had more than enough to power by Etchels. Take a look at the in-car shot. Watch the tree go red. As Kenny drove past it, he blew right past Chuck Etchels as well. Let's go down to the far end. Here's Allen.
Kenny Bernstein did not see the red light and obviously not happy.
No, I'm not happy. I don't mean to mess up like that. My boys work hard. Budweiser King team works hard. Wanted some enforcing the final. No, I'm not happy. I saw a lot of yellow. I can't believe it red lighted. Nice job by Chuck, though. He didn't red light, so that's good for him.
Oh, a lot of pressure for 200 grand as the driver upset with himself. Here is another of the dragster pairings. This is Gary Scelzi and Corey McClenathan. Before we get to this action, let's go back down to Alan Reinhardt with Chuck Etchels.
You wanted him more than you wanted anybody else on the property.
I didn't want Kenny at all. Kenny's a great racer, best businessman we have out here. But Lee's been saying some bad stuff about funny cars all day, and I wanted him, yeah, because we have pride over here. We work hard, we try hard. We have a lot of pride in our job, our fellow competitors, so it's rewarding, especially too. Jim Sickles, no sponsorship, no money, out there looking for it, and taking the Budweiser King out, that's quite an achievement.
And after the Budweiser King took out his own Kendall car.
I guess the emotion displayed by those two drivers answers the question as to whether the drivers are really into this kind of funny car versus dragster racing. Here is a dragster versus dragster matchup. Gary Scelzi, the reigning Winston champ, up against Corey McClenathan. He finished runner-up in the Winston chase for 2 consecutive years. Earlier, Alan talked to Scelzi.
Gary Scelzi admittedly has not been comfortable with the starting line procedure. Having to give the funny cars a head start has rattled him a little bit sitting in the cockpit of his car. But the way the ladder comes down for this round, Gary gets to be back in his comfort zone, a top fuel car in the other lane. And Gary, the good news is back to normal. The bad news is Corey Mack.
I know it, my nemesis, I'll tell you. But you know what, at least hopefully I can leave on time and do a normal procedure if I can remember what I did before.
You got to remember not to give him 310s or you'll never catch him.
I better not leave off of his sound or I'll be in trouble.
That would be trouble. This would be a great matchup. Number 1 and number 2 in the points last year.
Rick Castle, the new head wrench for Corey Mack, and his Joe Gibbs-owned Top Fuel dragster. Gary Scelzi, of course, utilizing the talents and skills of Alan Johnson. What a tremendous race. Corey McClenathan wins at a 4:63, but look at the reaction time, 4:24. 4:00 is perfect. Watch this now. Corey Mack gets a slight advantage at the start, and he needs every bit of it because Gary Scelzi went quicker on the run. 4.60 at 3:13, but he was 0.04 of a second late, leaving the starting line. There, the margin of victory.
Woo!
You love beating him.
I love it. You know, he's one of the best competitors, best drivers out here. Definitely got one of the best tuners. They do a great job. But today is MB&A Top Fuel Dragster Day. I just want to go a couple more rounds.
Did you guys on the radio tell you it was a hole shot?
Yeah, they did. They did. 4:24 light. Pretty good for an old guy.
He's been the best on the tree all weekend, even with the handicap.
Not bad for a young guy either. Our semifinal pairings are set. It'll be Chuck Etchels against Bob Vandergriff. Will Chuck win again on a red light? Corey Mack takes on John Force. Stay with us. Welcome back to Bristol Dragway, and this, the NHRA Winston Noble Showdown, where Top Fuel dragsters race funny cars. Now, all weekend long, the funny car guys have shown a bit of solidarity, almost teamwork. For example, in the pre-race activities under the Bristol Tower, it was a huddle with the funny car guys bent on a mission to keep Top Fuel out of the winner's circle. Here in the semifinals, it's Top Fuel versus dragster. Now, let's go to the pit area. Here's Alan.
Bob Vandergriff came into the Noble Showdown not qualified. After all, this team has never won an NHRA national event, and that's how you get seated in the field. So he had to earn his way in, and earn it he did. He was #1 qualifier with a 4:55 elapsed time from Friday night. Today, he's just been mowing his way through the field, even though it did fall off a little bit against Tony Schumacher, but they softened it up for the third round, and it went 4:58. Quickest car in the ballpark right now. Now, they change engines in this car as part of normal maintenance. Even though there's nothing wrong with that motor that just ran 458, there's a brand new bullet in the car. And without so much as a national event trophy on his mantelpiece, Vandergriff really believes he can walk out of here with Winston's $200,000. Bill?
The Nitro Funny Car, driven by Chuck Etchels and owned by Jim Sickles, is going to the semifinals against Bob Vandergriff, and it would be polite to describe this team as maybe one of the less heavily funded teams here. Are you a little surprised, Tom Anderson, that you're getting this deep into eliminations this weekend?
Well, not really. If you remember right, I raced with Al Hoffman there for quite a few years before we got a major sponsorship, and I think we won this race a couple of times without a sponsor. So we've been there and done that before, but we're trying to do good here and win this race. We've got an excellent driver, and we've got actually an excellent team, and we're just looking for some funding.
Do you have to tune this car conservatively because of the fact that you don't have a lot of extra stuff to put in if you start breaking it?
Oh, absolutely. It's a little conservative, but it's still pretty fast.
Obviously he is, and the whole irony of this thing is that this is one team that maybe came here with the least money, and in a couple of rounds may leave here with the most.
That'd be great.
Oh, Tommy Anderson, that'd be great. It'd be great as well for this team. Joe Gibbs, MBNA car, and Corey McClenathan at the wheel. They're getting it ready. They're racing John Force, and they hope maybe the green paint scheme might be kryptonite-based, maybe, because John Force, with his new Superman paint scheme, he's always surrounded by a bevy of fans. Somewhere down in the midst of all that fracas is Alan Reinhardt.
John Force rolled into Bristol decked out as Superman. And so far this weekend, he has been running like Superman. He was the #1 funny car qualifier, and he's just been crushing them throughout eliminations. As we get set for the semifinals, here's something to think about. Twice today, we've seen top fuel car against top fuel car. We have not yet seen two funny cars run each other. The only way that could happen, if Force gets past Corey Mack and Chuck Etchels is able to stop Bob Vandergriff, we'd have two funny cars together in the final. But I'll tell you this, win, lose, or draw, the fans have thought this guy was Superman for years.
What we do have is a top fuel dragster against the funny car in both of our semifinal round races. Coming up next. Welcome back to Bristol Dragway. Tommy Anderson starting Chuck Etchell. A quick check of the engine, making sure everything's running properly. They'll drop the body down on the funny car, closing Etchels in as he concentrates on the Christmas tree to beat this man, Bob Vandergriff Jr. Talk about focused. He is ready to take a shot at Etchels to move to the $200,000 final round of this Noble Showdown. The burnout procedure has been staggered all day long. The funny cars do a slightly longer burnout, maybe build just a bit more heat in these nitro-burning engines that produce nearly 7,000 horsepower out of 500 cubic inches. Back in the staging lanes, our other pair of semi-finalists doing whatever they do to take the pressure off. John Force walking and waving, just everything normal with that camp. And Corey McClenathan, a little bit of confidence maybe, as he's got a good top fuel dragster and he has been on his game in the reaction time wars. For Chuck Etchels, things have been exactly the opposite. His opponents have not been on their game. In fact, each one of them has left a big red light showing. Chuck Etchels advanced to the semifinals on the basis of 3 consecutive red lights. Ray Alley, the crew chief for Bob Vandergriff, bringing him to the starting line, positioning him in the highest traction area available. Etchels, red lights. Vandergriff to the finals at a 493, 281 miles an hour. Not quite as quick as his previous round. Watch Chuck Etchels. He staged very light, just flickering the bottom or staging light. Then when he hit the throttle, way too soon. Etchels almost a 1/10 and a half too quick at the Christmas tree. Vandergriff to the final round.
Bob, I guess since you're used to the funny cars leaving early, that red light didn't spook you, huh?
Oh, I don't even listen to it. I just watch my light. And it shook really hard out there, and I had to pedal it. And hopefully Force will have problems. I don't know if lane choice is that big a deal, but the Jersey's car is in the final, and that's all that matters. Great job by our team.
Now, wait a minute. Are you writing off Corey Mack?
My fault. Dragsters are going to kick John Force's butt. You watch right here.
Nice recovery, Bob. All right, he's already told you the next pair coming up when we return. It's Corey McLenithan against the guy they call Superman. Welcome back to Bristol Dragway as the MBNA crew awaits the word to fire the engine for Corey McLenithan. Rick Castle and crew have performed admirably to this point, but here's John. One of those long, smoky burnouts that the fans love so dearly out of John Force. For Corey McLenithan, this is the challenge of the weekend. John Force not only qualified in the #1 spot, he brings a lot of good baggage with him to this race. 8 Winston championships alone. A lot of credit on both sides of the track here has to go to the crew chiefs. And in John Force's case, he has been paired for a decade with one of the true geniuses of nitro racing. We are referring, of course, to Austin Coyle. Earlier, Bill Stevens had a chance to stop by John Force's pit area and talk with the fabled head ranch.
Superman emblazoned on the Castrol Mustang of John Force this weekend, and so far he's been slicing through his half of the ladder like X-ray vision. His trusted companion right here and tuner, Austin Coyle, got to be pretty happy. It's almost been effortless so far.
Well, I wouldn't say that, you know, but it sure is an interesting race. You know, it gives the fans to see all their favorite cars race each other where they don't normally get to do that. So that's a good thing. And other than that, like, I don't know, it's kind of a fun race. And, of course, if we make it into the finals, it'll be even more fun yet.
Well, if they want to get to the finals, they'll have to beat Corey Mack. In the last round, Corey Mack beat Gary Selzy on a hole shot and went 463. So for the Castrol team, this could be a job for Superman.
For the Top Fuel dragsters, it is an exercise in concentration. They have to sit and wait and watch their funny car competitors depart the starting line 0.37 of a second ahead of them. There's a whole lot of noise, there's a lot of flame, and just the sheer thought that the competitors getting away from them, now they got to worry about that too. For the fans, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Funny cars against dragsters. Corey Mack played the starting line to perfection, but his car let him down. John Force wins it with the quickest elapsed time of the weekend by the Floppers, 4:87 at 3:06. Corey McLenithan, using up an engine, went 4:67, but he had a huge advantage at the starting line. If that engine had lived just a few more feet, we'd see Corey McLenithan in the final round, but not to be. John Force advances to the finals to race Bob Vandergrift Jr. A great 4:15 reaction time by Corey McLenithan. He was definitely on his game as a driver this weekend. A big celebration by the crew for John Force because they realize they are one round away from a $200,000 payday. Let's go down to Allen.
Well, I guess this is just like the Winston guys planned it. We've got a dragster and a funny car in the final, and the funny car guys are still ganging up.
Well, we're excited. The funny car guys really rallied this weekend, whether they were Ford or Chevrolet, or it didn't make a difference what it was. Dodge, they just wanted to be able to give the dragster guys a race and come out here and not look bad. And Chucky did it all weekend. All the guys did. Bazemore, Cruz, everybody just fought it out, and one of us are going to make it. Win or lose, we're just proud because we come from the old school, don't we?
Hey, you just ran faster than the Top Fuel car with no handicap. They're going to try, they're going to start whining. You know what? They're going to start whining, and they're going to run heads up.
Can you believe a Kendall car and a Castrol car sitting here loving each other? This is what it's all about.
Bazemore would have punched him right then. But I love him.
He loves me.
I think togetherness is just a bit too much, guys. It's a funny car and a dragster in the finals. Bob Vandergriff against John Force. We'll be coming right back.
Falling, all of a sudden she knows over. I thought, oh, this is over.
Kryptonite, babe. You needed kryptonite.
I needed some more green, you know. I didn't have enough on me, I guess, but that's why he's the champ.
Welcome back to Bristol Dragway, where night has fallen, and we are getting set for the finals of the Winston Noble Showdown. Just a few moments ago, Alan checked in the Bob Vandergriff pit area.
Standard maintenance in the Vandergriff camp includes changing motors. New bullet for every round. As we go into the final of the No-Bull Showdown, it's just like it's supposed to be. #1 qualifier in dragster against #1 qualifier in funny car. What's it going to take to beat John?
Oh, we're going to have to step it up. You just seen a 487 out of that car over there, and this one's going to have to run a low 50. It's capable of it. Ray's going to stand on it. We don't have any other choice. You better look out.
I got to believe reaction times are going to play into this. You run a 59 or a 60 flat with a good light.
Well, he's got quite an advantage. 3700s is a big deal, and if we're both on time, I'm going to need to run a low 50. So we're going to give it a shot. We got nothing to lose, and we're going to try and hold up the dragster side of the deal.
You know, I can't believe it. He didn't think of kryptonite. How else would you beat Superman?
With a quick elapsed time, maybe, huh? While the nitro cars have been battling to the final round, we've also had action in a number of other categories, including Pro Stock Truck. A 12-truck field started action here this weekend, and we're down to the last two. Randy Daniels up against Brad Jeter. Jeter beat Sirachi in the first round, then Freeman, the victim, in round number 2. Brad got a bye in the third round. While on the other side of the ladder, it was Randy Daniels beating Spitzer, Smith, and Johns. The finals now between two Chevrolet S10 pickup trucks. Randy Daniels celebrating his birthday today on the far side of the racetrack. The Carl Chevrolet truck of Brad Jeter in the near lane. Happy birthday to Randy Daniels, as Brad Jeter just gave him the biggest present he's going to get this weekend. Brad with a red light at the starting line. Randy Daniels winning $15,000 with a 771. It's Pro Stock Motorcycle coming up next. Let's take a look and see how these two finalists, Matt Hines and David Schultz, got there. In the semifinal round, it was Hines in the near lane. His competitor, John Smith, on the far side of the racetrack. This just a bit earlier in the semis. A red light by John Smith. Matt Hines blasted his way across the quarter-mile stripe. 737 at 185 miles an hour. Meantime, David Schultz was in the far lane up against the number 2 qualifier, Angel Seeling, in the near lane. Maybe it's something in the air, because Angel Seeling left a red light at the start. David Schultz broke at the line. He didn't even move 3 feet. But the automatic disqualification of Seeling gave him the win. He made it to the finals to race Matt Hines. Here were his competitors along the way. You see how each side of the ladder got to the championship round. Here in the darkness at Bristol Dragway, the championship of the Winston Noble Showdown for Pro Stock bikes at stake between Matt Hines and David Schultz. Both of these riders are champions. Earlier this year, Matt Hines won the race at Joliet. David Schultz has not won an NHRA national event since 1997. And Schultz will not win the Winston Noble Showdown. Matt Hines goes 734 at 185. $10,000 going to the coffers of Vance and Hines Racing based upon this win. Let's go to Alan.
The Noble Showdown winner gets hats, gets jackets, gets a great big check.
Man, it's awesome. We've been struggling all season long, and it's great to get a $10,000 check here at the Winston Showdown. Man, after winning last year at the Invitational, this Winston people have been treating me pretty good lately.
The only thing missing this weekend was points, huh?
Yeah, you know, I just wanted to come out here and try to get myself in tune, because last race I couldn't cut a light, and this race I think I did a pretty good job.
Time now to take a look at the action in the Pro Stock category, the four-wheeled version. Before we see the finals, let's go back to round number 2 racing, where a pair of Johnsons squared off. It was the GM Goodwrench Service Plus Pontiac of Warren in the far lane. Alan Johnson in his Food City Amoco Dodge Avenger was in the near lane. Watch the near perfect light by Alan Johnson and watch the results. Alan Johnson had a 4:06 reaction time. His elapsed time on the run, 7:06, good enough to beat the 6:97 by Warren Johnson. In the semis, Alan Johnson was in the far lane. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. He left a red light against Troy Coughlin. That moved Troy to the final round. The other pair in the semis, Troy's brother Jake was in the near lane against Greg Anderson, the former crew chief for Warren Johnson. Jake won 7 flat to a 7:03. So the number 1 qualifier, Jake, meets his brother Troy in the final round, and all Jake Coughlin finals. You know, Dad Jake Sr. has got to be proud of this moment. There's a lot of money at stake here as well. The winner gets $50,000 in this Winston Noble Showdown. Matching Oldsmobiles, 500 cubic inches, carbureted on gas. Nearly perfect reaction times and nearly identical, but Troy, having problems, has to shut it off. And Jake Coughlin wins the Winston Noble Showdown and the 50 grand. 7 flat at 196. Look at this, a 4:17 light for Jake, a 4:18 light for Troy. He had some tire shake. Here's the view from the passenger seat on Troy's car. Let's go to Alan.
On what is already a pretty spectacular resume, now we can add Winston Showdown champion for Jake Coughlin Jr.
Hey, thank you very much. Thanks, Alan. I tell you what, you know, it was, again, just an excellent weekend for the whole Jegs team. And, you know, Troy and I to run in the final, we certainly didn't foresee having any lane issues out there. But, you know, it was a no-lose situation for us. Our whole team's just done one heck of a job. Dick Mask and my dad, Jeg, we just couldn't be more excited heading into Denver.
Coming up next, the fuel duel of the century. Welcome back to our Speed World coverage of the NHRA Winston Noble Showdown from Bristol Dragway at Bristol, Tennessee. It is the fuel duel. Top Fuel Dragster against Funny Car. Bob Vandergrift Jr.'s top fueler coming to life. John Force. He may be Superman, but he also has Austin power. Yeah, baby. Austin Coil, that is. Bob Vandergrift Jr. with the great Ray Alley heading up the wrenching chores on the Jersey's dragster. And both drivers will give all the credit in the world to the crew chiefs. They make the decisions that determine how the car will run on the racetrack. The driver's job, concentrate on the Christmas tree, cut as good a light as possible, and if you can keep it from smoking the tires, you gain a few extra gold stars up on the wall at the end of the run. Austin diving in underneath the body on the Castrol Superman Mustang. John had a great 487 in the semifinal round. Bob Vandergrift's performance fell off a little bit, but we know he is more than capable of putting the Jersey's car through in the mid-450 zone. All the decisions are completed. It is time now to determine who's the best, Top Fuel Dragsters or Funny Cars. They both smoked the tires, but John Force recovered and the Funny Cars win it. Forget the times, 5:47, who cares? What really matters is who gets to the finish line first. In a case like this, there, John smoked the tires, then it was Vandergrift's turn. Force back on the throttle again, was able to get those big Goodyears to stick to the pavement, and look at this. There's $200,000 in John Force's bank account from yet another view. All over the track was Vandergrift. He said he was going to hop it up. He really did. Force got it to stick at the top end and was driving away at the finish line. Look at the celebration of the crew because they share in that $200,000 payoff. Let's go down to Allen with the winner.
Can't even believe this is happening.
I guess nobody had any kryptonite today, huh?
Man, I tell you, I can't even believe this is happening. Great racer, Vandergrift, and just unbelievable. Austin Coyle and Bernie Federle and John Mellon and Tony, this whole team, they just fought all weekend, and everyone's telling me we're Superman. I ain't Superman. I'm just old John.
Man.
I got to tell you, I was praying to Cliff all day to bail you out of this deal, how we ever got here. But I'm really excited. Winston put up this 200 grand or better, and Bruton Smith just built this beautiful racetrack. Unbelievable, and what he's done to help NHRA and Castle and Ford and Mac Tool, all my people. This is probably the biggest day of my life. I don't have to go to Top Fuel. I can stay here where I love funny cars. It's unbelievable. But I want to say something. Dragsters may be king of the sport, but funny cars ruled here this weekend at Bristol. Yes!
For you, man.
Yes! Yes! Never! Ever!
Yo, John, are you having fun yet? Well, the fans that packed this racetrack, even with the rain, thoroughly enjoyed themselves in the first ever Winston No-Bull Showdown. The funny cars versus the dragsters. I'll tell you, these guys and gals really got into the action. And John Force came home the winner. There have been all kinds of fireworks, including these, closing out the action of this Winston No-Bull Showdown. For Alan Reinhardt and Bill Stevens, I'm Dave McClellan, saying so long from the brand new Bristol Dragway, and of course, this first ever NHRA Winston No-Bull Showdown. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For more, log on to ESPN.com, part of the Go Network. Remember, go.com.
I don't have to go to Top Fuel. I can stay right here. I'm done. I'm done.